determination of the Sustaining Deputy Advisory Agency for 14 airspace lots. Now, is this fucking NASA or what? You don't need to have no airspace. The only airspace is right here. During public comment, make your statement for overriding consideration for the negative mitigation for a negative monitoring of their program within the time restriction here, which I oppose under VTT 74529-1A. As you see, no physical impact statement. And as far as my remaining 35 seconds, you see, who other than Mommy, Nuri, on item 11, fuck the fat cunt, and item 12, fuck the fat cunt, who was upset with us this afternoon and asked that Mr. Spindler hold my hand. Thank you, Mommy. But again, I'm here to appeal and file my regional consul complaint against Liuna Local 300. Fuck them. So my general public comment tonight,
Sir,
folks,
we in this committee we call general public comment at the end. So
you don't have general public comment?
Not right now. You still have an opportunity later after the meeting. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Zacatecas.
The next speaker is Wayne.
That's the way they do it at Zacatecas, but not here. Okay. So item number 1, we don't want to hear from the report. Fuck you. We don't need that. No. So now we have number 2. We want the alcohol license. Oh, man. It's in CD1. No. Remember? All right. We will defer to the honorable councilman, Mr. Cedillo, on item 2. Yeah, it's the peace treaty shit. Yeah, okay. Item 3, now we have environmental zones, C2 zones. My favorite zone is C2 zone. Yes. And also, on the corner of Hoover and James M. Woods, please amend the zoning to allow for a 45-foot height. You know why. Well, Mr. Harris Dawson knows why, right? Yes. And thank you for that agreement over there to do that. Yes. And then number 4, CD14, belongs to the drunk Jose Huizar. No more drunkenness in number 4. No more. Number 5 goes to the gangster Herman Jason Wesson. Yes, he needs that project because he needs to get the payoffs from the developers to pay for that expensive wedding for his son and the coon that he married. Now, number 6 is 7. Oh, my God. 8. Oh, my God. 9. We've got an entire redevelopment of the 13th district. Congratulations, developers. You're now going to be able to tear everything apart in Hollywood and rebuild it from scratch. Let's just take a bomb and just put it down Hollywood and then redevelop the whole thing into big skyscrapers. Yes, that's right. No use fighting it, right? And finally, fuck Jose Huizar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Anna Brooks. And then Charles Fisher, Jorge Castaneda. Anna Brooks, Charles Fisher, Jorge Castaneda. Not here. Kevin Jordan, Lisa Brereton, Margot Gerber, okay, this is an item, a multiple item area. For anybody who has signed up to speak on 2 or more items, we are taking them now. I've called Anna Brooks, Charles Fisher, Jorge Castaneda, Kevin Jordan, Lisa Brereton. Okay, I'll go on. Margot Gerber, Mickey Jackson. Naila Arslanian, this is your opportunity to speak. If you don't come up now, then you won't have an opportunity to speak if you signed up to speak. Susan Hunter, Dan McDonald, okay, I've called these individuals to speak. You're not coming up to speak. I'll continue. Go. Any of you are the people who I called to speak? You're out. Your time is up. Your time is now. So if you want to speak on those items, go right ahead. I can't hear you if you can't speak. If you don't speak into the microphone.
This is confusing because we've nominated items and the HCM has moved them forward, and we each have one we need to speak on, and not all 4.
Okay.
So this type of rule is not real compatible with this type of
I agree with
item.
you, but that's the rule, and we follow those rules here. If you signed up to speak on 2 or more items, we're taking you up to speak now. So I've called these individuals. I typically do not allow this back and forth. Those are the rules. If you wish to speak, I'm going to go through the list one more time, and please come up and speak. Otherwise, you're going to forfeit your opportunity to speak. So the first person is, I got to go back to the beginning of the list.
Okay.
Anna Brooks, are you here? Do you wish to speak? Yes? Okay. You have 2 minutes. After Anna Brooks is Charles Fisher.
I'm sorry, sir. I nominated 3 of the items. May I not speak on each one?
Are you, was this appealed by, what items are those?
I don't know the numbers. It's the 4 cultural heritage nominations. 6, 7, 8, and 9.
So I see. Okay.
That's why we're confused.
I got you. Okay, that makes sense. So let's do this. Which ones did you nominate?
6, 7, and 9.
Your name is Anna Brooks.
Pardon?
Your name is Anna Brooks.
It is.
The applicant that we have is Lisa Brereton for 6. Number 7 is the 8th Healthcare Foundation for 7. The applicant for 8 is Art Deco Society of Los Angeles.
That is who paid for them.
Our representative, she actually submitted the application as the expert for 6, 7, and 9. So that's our representative. She completed the application. You should have a record.
I can't hear you unless you speak into the microphone.
Our representative for 6, 7, and 9 is Ann Brooks. She's the expert who submitted the application. Her name is on it as the submitter of the application and the expert who prepared it. So you should have that in the record. And she was here to speak on our behalf for 6, 7, and 9. And Charlie Fisher is here for 8 in the same capacity for Art Deco.
Okay. So then, Charlie and Anna Brooks. When we take those items up, Anna Brooks and Charlie would have an opportunity to speak for 5 minutes when we take those items up. Otherwise, all the other people can speak now. Okay?
May I ask 5 minutes each or 5 minutes total?
Pardon me?
5 minutes each or total?
We'll figure that out when we get to those items, okay? But for now, I'm going to continue going with Jorge Castaneda. Are you here? Okay, it's your time to speak. You have 2 minutes.
Charlie Fisher, as I will come back and speak on item 8. I just want to voice my support for the other 3.
Okay, when we come back. Okay, thank you.
Hi, thank you. First assembled in the 1930s and admired for decades due to its dazzling design, Crossroads, in its architecture and in its function, served as an elevation for hope, a battle cry for creativity and livability, And it did so during a time when the Great Depression actively destroyed and demolished countless lives, including those of many Angelinos of many different backgrounds. Then, as today, Americans were living simultaneously in an era of technological growth, yet also in an era of economic inequality and economic decay. The people of Hollywood persisted then, and they will persist again today, so long as the people, their elected leaders, and the folks who come out and visit and photograph this outstanding landmark respect the authority it represents, the importance of history. My name is Jorge Castañeda with the Coalition to Preserve LA, and I respectfully urge this committee to please support the inclusion of the Talbot Wood Double Dwelling, Major Kunkel Bungalow, Selma Las Palmas Courtyard Apartments, and Bollinger Building into the list of historic cultural monuments. Thank you.
Kevin Jordan.
I'm here representing Hollywood Heritage, and we concur with the Cultural Heritage Commission's positive findings and recommendations regarding the Talbot Wood Double Dwelling. In particular, we note the structure is an increasingly rare specimen of pre-1920 multifamily housing in Hollywood, and given the minimal alterations and renovations made to the structure since its construction, it remains an excellent example of craftsman style. I personally give walking tours of Hollywood for Hollywood Heritage, and we begin our tours by the Hollywood Reporter Building. We walk past Crossroads, and to see this structure, with the high-rises that are going up around it, and to see a stone's throw from the Walk of Fame, with literally there are still lemon trees against this wood double dwelling. It's a wonderful thing for the people from all over the world to see how this sleepy little citrus town became Tinseltown. It's important that people see a physical example of it. So I hope you take it into consideration. Thank you very much.
Okay, I had on my list, it's no longer there. Oh yeah, there she, Lisa Brereton. But Lisa, you're listed as the applicant for item 6, but now you're conceding your as the applicant to Anna Brooks.
I'm the applicant, but Anna Brooks is our hired expert who prepared the application. So she's speaking on our behalf for 6, 7, and 9.
Okay.
But I would like to just speak in support of those.
Okay, go right ahead.
With regard to number 6, the Talbot Double Dwelling reflects broad cultural, economic, and social history of both the state and community, and is a rare example of multifamily residential structure in early post-consolidation Hollywood. And we would ask you to adopt the findings of the commission. It also has an inherently valuable study of the period. With regard to the Major Kunkel Bungalow, number 7, it's a very old building built between 1913 and 1920. It's a rare example of single-family residence prevalent in Hollywood prior to its annexation by the city, as the commission recognized. With regard to number 8, and you'll have a lot of speakers on that today, people are being very impacted who live in those apartments, and we'd ask you to take careful consideration of that. It's an excellent example and highly intact example of multifamily residential property in Hollywood in the Regency architectural style, and has many residents currently living there who would be displaced if it's demolished. Finally, the Bollinger Building is a great example of live-work apartments. It's a creative incubator for budding talent in the Hollywood film industry, and this type of building is increasingly rare in Hollywood. As you're familiar, we have a number of very modern-style high-rises going up all over Hollywood, and once you demolish these types of buildings, there's no replacing them. There's no going back. So we really ask you to carefully consider how quickly we're losing these types of buildings and preserve them. Thank you.
Thank you. Margot Gerber, Mickey Jackson.
So I'm the applicant for the Las Palmas Courtyard Apartments. Charlie Fisher was our historic consultant, so should I be speaking now or should I speak later? And I'm just speaking on the one item.
If you're speaking on the one item, you could speak later and you'll have 1 minute.
Okay.
Yes, and then Charlie Fisher will have 5 minutes.
Okay.
You want to do that?
Yes,
okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Mickey Jackson?
Mickey Jackson, Healthy Housing Foundation, Coalition to Preserve LA. I have grave concerns about the integrity of our districts, our historic areas and our districts. This particular area has been identified by several different agencies, the CRA and others, as a particularly significant historic district. That means it needs to tell a story. And if everything that tells that story isn't there in some way, you don't have a story. And these buildings tell that story, and you'll hear more about that later. I have two other concerns I want to voice. One was that if Curran Price is here, that I wonder that perhaps Mr. Price might consider recusing himself. And the reason is that the Selma Las Palmas apartments, the displacement of those tenants requires the services of a contractor, and the contractor who has been contracted to help displace them and to facilitate all of that is his wife, Del Richards. And so I think that constitutes a pretty clear conflict. So I would like to ask that. And the last thing I'll say is that we are too casual in getting rid of our history in LA. We are famous for being too casual. And the commission has very carefully recognized these buildings, recommended saving these buildings, and has very clear and coherent reasons for saving each of these buildings. So I hope you listen to their expertise. I hope you listen to our experts who work with them quite a bit. And I hope we pass this and we save those buildings.
Okay, and for the record, Mr. Price is not here in the room and not present at the time. Nyla Arslanian, Susan Hunter, Dan McDonald.
Good afternoon. I'm Nyla Arslanian, editor of Discover Hollywood magazine and president emeritus of the Hollywood Arts Council. I'm in support of the items 6, 7, 8, and 9 that are coming before you, having been recommended for designation by the city's Cultural Heritage Commission. Several years ago, when the CRA conducted a survey of buildings in Hollywood, they determined which ones were of possible historic significance. And many believe that this undertaking would have a positive outcome in preserving our community and its assets. But now buildings deemed significant are slated for demolition, and concerned citizens and preservation groups are forced to apply for landmark status in order to protect these. Of particular note is the Las Palmas Courtyard apartments that comes before you. The Cultural Commission approved the designation on its relevance architecturally and historically, and in particular its classic Hollywood Regency style worthy of preservation. Hollywood is more than a name and more than an industry. It is a place of worldwide historic significance recognized by the state, and is one of the state's premier destinations for visitors the world over. We are at a crossroads. The city can choose to demolish history, homogenize a very special corner of the world, or we reap the economic benefits of protecting one of the city's most important assets, Hollywood. There's no doubt that Hollywood star is rising, but care must be taken to avoid killing the goose that laid the golden egg. Please support the recommendations that come before you today. What's at risk is the very soul, the essence of the place where an industry that changed the world began. That's historic and that's significant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan Hunter, Coalition to Preserve Los Angeles, and I am in support of all 4 of the nominations today. I constantly hear, why are we allowing historic preservation to stop our development? And my question to you is, why are you allowing development to erase our history? Our history should have priority, especially in an area that sits at a 16% vacancy rating. The reason why people move into Hollywood is because they want to live in these older units, because they want to have that connection to our living history. Because once it's gone forever. And we've seen this happen time and time again, and we can learn from our mistakes, and we can choose to actually prioritize the fact that we have a cultural significance to Hollywood that is intentionally being erased in order for a few people to be able to profit from. That profit isn't going to last for our entire history. But the experiences that people have coming to Hollywood because they want to connect with their history, that does. And that should have more weight and more power than a speculative real estate disaster. And I also agree that Curran Price should be recused from being able to vote on 5 through 9 based on the fact that his wife is contracted by Heritage in order to be able to take the tenants for the tenant relocation. And while she may only be hired out for item number 8, obviously she has influence over her husband, and he's voting on all 4 today. So I would appreciate to make sure that Price is recused, and please preserve our history, because once it's gone, we're never going to be able to get it back. Thank you.
Hi, Anna Brooks. I would like to request a minute or so to speak on Charlie's application. If I might.
Ma'am, if you are Anna Brooks.
Correct.
Let me tell you and other speakers as well, you just cannot come up and speak like that. Otherwise, it could get chaotic. Please go to the side, speak to the Sergeant at Arms, or sign up to speak in the back.
I signed up to speak on this one.
Oh, on which one, ma'am?
8.
Okay, when we call that item up, we'll call you up.
Okay, fine.
Okay. Don McDonald?
Good afternoon, honorable councilmen. My name's Dan McDonald. I'm a lifelong resident of Los Angeles City and a current resident of LA District Council 14. We saw a hell of a job. I'm here to speak on items 10, 11, and 12. I'm representing the Southwest Regional Council of Carpenters. I've been a carpenter proudly building and serving the city since 1992. Specifically on item 10, we've submitted a written appeal, but we believe the city violated its own code provisions by imposing a separate appeal deadline for the VTT approval. This project requires a legislative approval because it requires a general plan amendment, and so the appeal period should be within 10 days of the date of the mailing of the Planning Commission decision and not 10. On items 11 and 12, we speak in opposition to the project. We believe that the draft EIR analyzed a project with a maximum of 422 residential units. However, the Planning Commission voted dramatically to increase the size of the project to between 623 and 675 units. This is an expansion of over 50%, which will increase the project's impact on traffic, air pollution, public services, etc. Yet the expanded project was not even mentioned in the draft EIR. For this reason, the city should require a revised draft EIR to analyze the 675-unit project now proposed to be approved by the city staff. Also, on the issue of good jobs, the city must determine the economic benefits of the project outweigh its significant environmental impacts. CEQA specifically states that the city must consider whether the project will create employment opportunities for highly trained workers. The developer has not committed to create good jobs, thus the city cannot make the required CEQA findings. Council members, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Multiple item? That's it for multiple item? Great, thank you very much. We will now continue to the next item on the agenda. That is the consent items. On item number 2, we will move that item. If there are no objections, seeing no objections, so ordered. Item number 4, we will move that item. If there are no objections, so ordered. Item number 5. On item 5, we have one speaker. It was on consent. We will call that to order, please. 5.
Item 5, Councilman, this is a Planning Commission report. It's a draft ordinance for a zone change to demo the existing single-family home and to create a multifamily building with 49 condominiums.
Okay, we have one public speaker, Elisa.
Lisa. I'm a resident and member of the Neighborhood Association where the proposed height and zone change
Can you please speak into the microphone?
Sorry.
Thank you.
My name's Elisa. I'm a resident and a board member of the neighborhood association located in the area where this proposed project is being made. This project would take away 6 livable units that can be used for the low to middle class families that live in the area, and would construct 49 condominiums that wouldn't benefit the people already living in the community. We are opposing this because we will lose livable units, but we're also opposing this because of the traffic in the area. There's a lot of traffic due to the church there at that location and the market that's located there as well. So I am requesting that the council please look into this. We do have a letter.
Go ahead.
We have a letter from the neighborhood council opposing the request. I don't know if that was logged in or received by your office, but I have a copy here.
Okay, thank you. Is Council District 10 here? Okay. Do you wish to speak on this? Okay, can we call staff up, please? Can you give us an overview of this project, and particularly the public comment mentioned some loss of affordable units, and if you could...
Sure. Okay, so just really briefly, good afternoon. I'm Jenna Monterosa with Planning. I'm here with my supervisor, Nick Hendricks. The request before you is a recommended approval of a height district change from R41 to R42. The request, as stated, is in conjunction with the construction of 49 residential condominium units. What's existing today on site is a single-family residence, a duplex, and a fourplex, all of which are vacant and all of which have been LS'd prior to any decisions that were rendered both by the advisory agency for the tract and by the Central Area Planning Commission. With regards to public testimony and comments, we had no one in attendance at our initial subdivision hearing, nor did we have anyone in attendance at our Area Planning Commission meeting. As far as any affordable set-asides, although this project was filed subsequent to Measure JJJ, it is not required to have any affordable set-asides because the requested zone change is for a height district to only allow an increase in floor area, and it won't result in an increase in density. And so because of that, the only requirements that the project needs to do is have is meet the labor agreements per JJJ, but the requirement for set-aside is not part of what is before you or what was conditioned as part of the project approval. And so again, so just to speak on the neighborhood council, we did receive a letter of opposition. The letter actually did not state any reason in that initial, in our receipt of it. It just stated that they opposed the project, and staff contacted the neighborhood council, at which point they said it was due to the loss of RSO units.
Yeah, and so when you say it's been LS, can you explain to the public what that means?
Sure. So when so anything built prior to, I believe it's October 1st of 1978 is, and believe anything that's more than 2 units is subject to our rent stabilizer ordinance. What that doesn't necessarily mean it's affordable housing. It just means that that an owner cannot raise rent. There's a scheduled minimum requirements for them to raise rent. They have to go through HCID and do things through their process. When an owner wants to remove those from the rental market, they can do so, and it's called LSing the building. So you can LS a building if you're wanting to remove those units from the rental market altogether, which is what happened in this project. By proposing to do construction of condominiums that would be for sale, they are then removing them from the rental market. So there's no requirement to have rent-stabilized units when they construct. If they were to construct and within 5 years, in lieu of selling those units, they then wanted to rent them, then there are provisions in the RSO ordinance that says, yes, at that point, they would need to be rent-stabilized units. And there's a process for that. That's outside of planning. It would be through housing. But given that they agreed to remove them altogether from the rental market, they're not subject to have anything affordable or rent-stabilized on site as part of their new construction.
Okay, and so you said the duplexes were vacant for some time.
Correct.
And so they were vacant because people were LS'd, right? They were asked to move. And how long between that time and now?
I'd have to look back. It was prior to, it would have to be at least 6 months to a year. This went to commission in April. They had already been vacated months prior to that. And in order to do that, there's proper notification that requires anywhere up from 60 days, 120 to up to a year, depending on the eligibility of an individual tenant. But that's all done through housing, and as far as any planning approvals, we require that all of that be done through housing. And so it would require their sign-off before any permits would be issued.
Okay, thank you. We're going to hold this item on the desk, please. If you could, staff could stay here. We're going to hold it on the desk. Okay. Great, thank you. So we'll hold that item and continue the agenda. Next item that we have is item number 10, which we will continue to September 18th. And item number 1, we will, it's a report from the Director of Planning, Mr. Vince Bartoni.
Thank you, Chair Weezer, members of the Planning and Land Use Management Committee. I do not have a report today, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. So thank you very much, Mr. Bertoni. Next item is item number 3. If we could call that to order, please.
Item 3, Councilman, this is a City Planning Commission recommended proposed ordinance to facilitate pet adoption in the city.
Great, thank you. Mr. Blumenfield, would you wish to speak first or have staff present the item first?
I'd like to set the table on this and
Mr. Blumenfield.
tell folks what this is all about, at least from my perspective.
Okay.
So, thank you. About 2 years ago, Rock and Rescue in Woodland Hills, my district, it's a very popular animal rescue center, was threatened with closure because the city code did not allow adoption facilities in commercial areas like along Ventura Boulevard. At that time, we had hundreds of Valley constituents came out in force to support Rock and Rescue to make sure that we could continue to have them there. They came out to the local commission hearings. I worked with Rock and Rescue. I worked with the community. We were able to solve the problem and get a variance for Rock and Rescue, which was great. So they were able to keep their doors open, save lives, and continue to allow adoption in the West Valley. But that was one facility. And that process opened my eyes that there is a bigger issue here. While we were able to save Rock and Rescue along Ventura Boulevard, we realized that there were a lot of other rescues that were not being put in commercial areas or were potentially threatened that we could do something about. So that's when I partnered with a variety of community members, some of whom are here. Jeff Mausner, who serves on the Tarzana Neighborhood Council and chairs the Animal Welfare Committee. I see is here. We have the General Manager, Brenda Barnett, our Department of Animal Services, who do so much on a shoestring budget to save animals and fight for good homes. Best Friends Animal Society that helps operate the No-Kill Adoption Center in West LA. And our own animal superhero on the council, Councilmember Paul Koretz. So we all work together to find a solution. And with passionate activists, reputable adoption organizations, fellow animal-loving colleagues, we began to research these laws on the books and find out how we could change this policy for the better. We realized that the policy problem, didn't come out of a malintent. It was actually something that the origins of it came from a good place. When the city was eliminating the illegal breeding and puppy mill stores, many of the laws that were established also, possibly inadvertently, impacted rescue centers, essentially throwing the puppy out with the bathwater. But nevertheless, currently animal rescues are only allowed to operate now in manufacturing areas and industrial areas, near the freeways, warehouses, far away from where people can see them. And in looking at this, some people tried to rationalize that and say, well, we do that because of the odors or the animals are dangerous. But all of those reasons are things that can be easily mitigated and that there can be rules and regulations. So the time is now to bring animal rescues to where people can see them in front of storefronts, to be able to visit them, meet adoptable animals without having to drive down dark alleys and to these far-flung places in order to rescue an animal. Especially nowadays when we have retail stores are endangered in many ways, we've made great strides, and the whole retail market is changing. We've made great strides to create a no-kill city in LA, to move us in that direction, and this ordinance is going to help in that effort. Because these rescue centers are always no-kill, and they're the first in line to take animals who are often older or have behavioral problems, are harder to adopt. So having them along these commercial corridors will make a difference. At the end of this day, this legislation is going to help save lives, connect animals with their forever homes, something that I think we should all be strongly supporting. And just a word to the folks who have concerns about odors or community protections. We specifically added a number of items into this, a moving clause in the initial motion that ensures that operators abide by strict rules that must be followed through either on administrative or through land use control measures. The health and safety of communities should always be at the forefront of any decision, and I think we take that into consideration in a very good way in this legislation. And so, colleagues, I ask for your support on this important ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blumenfield. Anything to add from staff on that?
We have just a short overview of the ordinance. The Planning Department drafted an ordinance to increase the number of adult dogs that pet shops, pet shops or pet adoption centers are allowed to keep overnight. Currently, pet shops can operate in commercial zones, but not if they keep 4 or more dogs overnight. Establishments that keep 4 or more dogs, adult dogs overnight, are regulated as if they were kennels, and kennels are only allowed in industrial zones. The draft ordinance modifies the regulations so that pet shops keeping 4 or more adult dogs overnight can operate in certain commercial zones, such as C2, C4, C5, CM, but only if they comply with a set of standards. And these standards were crafted with the help of Building and Safety and Department of Animal Services to ensure that pet shops operate in a manner that is appropriate to a commercial setting. Generally, the ordinance prohibits the shops from breeding or from commercial boarding. It limits the number of adult dogs and cats based on the size of the shop, and there's a hard cap. Requires that all activities are conducted indoors and includes dog walking restrictions and limits noise and odor. And the ordinance also provides an avenue for pet shops to vary from the standards and for pet shops to operate in more restrictive commercial zones on a case-by-case basis if approved by a zoning administrator.
Great. Thank you. Any questions or comments, committee members? Okay. We will now go to public comment on this item. Jim Beckart, Jeffrey Mosner, and Elizabeth Orrick.
Thank you, members of the committee. Jim Bickart, representing Councilmember Koretz, here in strong support of this ordinance. The main thing I'd like to say about it at this point is that a number of cities that abut the city of Los Angeles, including Culver City, Glendale, Beverly Hills, Pasadena, all allow this use in their commercial areas without a conditional use permit and actually without the kinds of conditions that this ordinance places on these kinds of businesses. So this ordinance, as presented today, will provide considerable protection for the surrounding businesses and neighbors and accomplish the goals we set in the original puppy mill ordinance in 2012 to get animals from our shelters adopted in a wider variety of ways. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeffrey?
There's a community impact statement in support. I don't think I'll need the full 5, but go ahead.
Okay, you submitted a community impact statement from
yes,
which?
Tarzana Neighborhood Council.
Okay, you have 5 minutes, sir.
I won't use it all.
Okay.
Council members, I'm Jeffrey Mausner. I'm a board member and the second vice president of the Tarzana Neighborhood Council. I'm also chair of its Animal Welfare Committee, and I'm also a volunteer at the West Valley Shelter. The Tarzana Neighborhood Council passed a community impact statement in support of this proposed ordinance. The community impact statement supports allowing animal rescues to operate in commercial zones in order to increase animal adoptions and save the lives of animals. Furthermore, all of the volunteers who I have talked with at the West Valley Shelter support this proposed ordinance. I was the appellant in the case involving Rock and Rescue, the rescue that was almost closed down by the city because it is in a commercial zone, and which precipitated this case, and Councilman Blumenfield very much helped in that. I filed that appeal because, as a volunteer at the West Valley Shelter, I was personally aware of dogs and cats who were going to be killed at the shelter who were saved by Rock and Rescue. It would have been a tragedy for many dogs and cats if Rock and Rescue had been shut down. More than 5,000 people signed petitions in support of Rock and Rescue remaining open in a commercial zone. And over 100 people came to the hearing at the South Valley Area Planning Commission to support Rock and Rescue. So I know there is a great deal of support for allowing rescues to operate in commercial zones. Some of you may have received letters stating that this ordinance will lead to animal hoarding and all sorts of terrible conditions for the animals at these rescues. The exact opposite is true. People are less likely to do hoarding in a commercial zone where everything is visible and open to the public than in an industrial or residential zone. All of the conditions in these rescues in commercial zones are going to be much more open to scrutiny than a rescue hidden away in an industrial zone. The whole purpose of this ordinance is to put animal rescues in places where the public will more readily come to them. So the argument that hoarding is going to go on there more than in other places is just completely wrong. While there may be issues regarding enforcement of the puppy mill ban and issues regarding treatment and conditions of dogs and rescues, opposing this humane bill is not the way to deal with those issues. Thank you to the City Council, Council members Blumenfield and Koretz, Andrew Pennington, Ali Pugash, John Popich, Svetlana Pravina, Jim Bickhart, and the City Planning Department for their work on this ordinance and helping to save the lives of animals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Elizabeth Thorick.
Good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Thorick. I'm the National Manager of Puppy Mill Initiatives for Best Friends Animal Society. I was very involved in the original ordinance that this ordinance seeks to clarify, if you will. And I'm just here today to communicate Best Friends' support for this ordinance and to thank the committee for your time, your diligence, your patience in crafting this ordinance, and for soliciting public input. We really appreciate that this was a democratic process. It's been a long road, and I hope that you will vote to move this forward, and thank you.
Thank you. Concludes public comment. Any other questions or comments from committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Bloomfield, for bringing this forward. Much needed, and definitely with our current situation and many of our animal shelters, it would help alleviate that situation. And thank you for bringing this forward. You'd like to move this? Seconded. Any objections to approving this item? Seeing none, so ordered. Thank you.
Councilman,
Yes.
you may wish to request the city attorney to prepare the ordinance.
We are referring this to the city attorney. Yes, thank you. Okay, now 11 and 12.
Items 11 and 12, Councilman, are interrelated. Item 11 is the appeal filed by Local 300 La Luna. This relates to the track map for the project. And item 12 is basically the zone change ordinance and the various land use entitlements that are being appealed.
Thank you. Can staff give us an overview of these items, please?
Sure. This is Melina Zasajian with the Department of City Planning, reporting on the proposed icon at Panorama project. This is for a mixed-use project with 623 dwelling units and 60,000 square feet of ground floor retail. There are appeals of the EIR track map and CPC actions today, as well as a request for a zone and height district change. Regarding the appeals filed by the labor group, these have been fully addressed in the multiple times throughout the environmental and public review process, and those are in the council file. The appeals are without merit and should be denied. In response to the appellant's comments during the public comment today, he stated that the project is outside the scope of the EIR. This is completely incorrect. The EIR studied an alternative which had an increased residential component and reductions in the commercial portions. All impacts were fully analyzed and disclosed, and the appeal is unfounded. However, actions on the tract appeal should include a clarification that the haul route should have also been approved. This is also submitted in a letter from planning to the council file. In addition, in the appeal of the CPC action, the applicant has requested some clarifying language for some of the conditions, and the department supports those. Regarding the zone change and high district change, this is a transformative mixed-use development in the heart of Panorama City, and it supports city policies regarding housing and transit-oriented development. It's one block from Metro's planned light rail project for Van Nuys Boulevard. CPC recommended approval of the requests. The applicant also has requested one change to the queue conditions of the zone change regarding gray water, which is inconsistent with the CPC language. That concludes the report.
Great, thank you very much. We will now turn to public comment. First is Richard Drury. And on both items 11 and 12, you have 5 minutes each. That's 10 minutes to
Thank you,
speak.
honorable members of the committee. My name is Richard Drury of the law firm Lozo Drury. First off, I'd like to clarify, we filed extensive written comments on this project. I think there were 4 separate comment letters that we incorporated, and those comments were filed both on behalf of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, Local 300 here in Los Angeles, and the Southwest Regional Council of Carpenters. So I think only LIUNA was mentioned in the prior statements. I want to make it clear that we're representing both entities on this, and both entities have concerns about this project. I'd like to summarize the comments that we've made in the letter on behalf of the carpenters. The staff here, I think, is misrepresenting the situation somewhat. The draft EIR for this project analyzed a 423-unit project. In fact, it said maximum of 423. There were 3 alternatives mentioned in the draft EIR, all of which were smaller than 423. The agenda item stated that it would be a maximum size of 423 units. Only when the project got to the Planning Commission did staff issue a final EIR days before the commission that for the first time mentioned a 675-unit project. So days before that Planning Commission hearing, staff unveils a brand new project that is fully 50% larger than the project that was analyzed, presented to the public. Expert comments were presented on a 423-unit project. Of course, our experts had no reason to believe that the project might be 50% larger than that. So staff is saying, oh, this project, the 623-unit project was in the, quote, EIR. No, that's untrue. That's not alternative facts. That's just a falsehood. It was in the final EIR, and notably, the courts have held that this kind of bait and switch, where you present one small project to the public and then blow it up and make it much larger, You can't do that in a final EIR because there's no public comment period on a final EIR. There's no opportunity for response to comments on a final EIR, and there's no duty to mitigate environmental impacts on a final EIR. And the case is it's a California Supreme Court case called Mountain Lion Foundation. It's extensively cited in our written comment letter. But this is simply illegal. It's a violation of CEQA. Now, interestingly, staff did a revised draft EIR that also analyzed a 422-unit project, nothing larger. So they had two shots to get this right, and they got it wrong both times. And only after the close of public comments, only after all the expert comments had been submitted on the smaller project did they unveil this much larger project. Now, expanding the project from 422 units to 623 units, or 675 in the final, increases the size by 50%, but it also increases all of the impacts: traffic, air pollution, greenhouse gases, public services like sewage, fire, schools. All of the impacts of the project are increased fully by 50%. But none of that's disclosed in the draft EIR. None of it's mitigated in the draft or the final EIR for that matter. Now, after the final came out, we raced to get our experts to do supplemental analysis, and we've submitted comments by a firm called Soil, Water, Air Pollution Experts, SWAPE, here in Santa Monica. They concluded that increasing the size of the project from 422 to 623 units increases the air pollution emissions to above CEQA significance thresholds. Now, that's very significant because the smaller project that was analyzed in the draft EIR had air emissions that were less than significant during the construction phase. When they increased the size to 623, those emissions went above the 100-pound per day CEQA significance threshold. That's very significant because when you exceed those significance thresholds, you have a legally significant impact and a legal duty to impose all feasible mitigation measures. These emissions are primarily from construction equipment. Now, as you know, my clients are construction trades. They are the ones who are going to be breathing the emissions from the construction equipment, from the bulldozers, from the dump trucks, from the forklifts. They're going to be on the site, and the EIR simply does not have adequate feasible mitigation measures that have, in fact, been imposed on many projects throughout the state. This project doesn't even require simple feasible mitigation measures like Tier 4 construction equipment, which is available off the shelf. The project could incorporate other measures to reduce emissions from the project itself, but because the draft EIR didn't analyze the actual project that's going to be built, it analyzed a different project. None of those measures were imposed or implemented. The experts also calculate that greenhouse gas emissions will now be above CEQA significance thresholds. Namely, the threshold is 3,000 metric tons per year. Our experts calculate that the project that will be built will have 9,400 metric tons per year. In other words, 3 times above the CEQA significance threshold. And that the threshold can be calculated in 2 ways. The other way is called service population per year. It'll be 5.4 metric tons per service population per year compared to a threshold of 4.8. The importance with these numbers is before the expansion, the emissions were below significance. After the expansion, they rise above significance. That creates a legal duty to mitigate those impacts. Our traffic expert also calculated that the traffic projections will increase. Public service impacts to fire protection, schools, sewer will impact. All of these impacts were not analyzed in the draft EIR. They were only shielded from public review and analysis in a final EIR, and that's simply not allowed under CEQA. Finally, since the project will have significant environmental impacts, a statement of overriding considerations is required under CEQA. Under Section 21081, the overriding considerations must consider whether the economic benefits of the project outweigh the environmental impacts. Now, admittedly, that's a highly political decision. It requires weighing of economic benefits, environmental impacts, but the statute expressly calls out one benefit that must be considered, and that is, quote, whether the project provides, quote, employment opportunities for highly trained workers. In other words, is this project going to create good jobs or bad jobs? That's something that's within your purview, that's in the statute, written in the statute, not just the regs. And to date, the developer hasn't agreed to provide good quality jobs on this project, and therefore we believe that the benefits of the project do not outweigh the environmental impacts, and we urge the council to remand this back to staff, require a revised draft EIR that actually analyzes the project that's going to be built. That hasn't been done yet. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we hear from the applicant, which is, I have Aaron Fields as the applicant of record. Who is the representative for the project? We don't have, what's your name?
Aaron Fields?
Okay. Did you sign up to speak?
I did, yes.
Okay.
So you should have it in the system.
Okay, great. Thank you. Go right ahead. You also have 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Honorable committee members, my name is Aaron Fields, and I'm the developer of the iconic Panorama. Thank you for the opportunity to present our project to you today. I'd like to begin by thanking a number of individuals who have been instrumental in getting us to this point, as this has truly been a collaborative effort. I'd like to thank Milena, Heather, and Mark from planning for their exceptional work and being an absolute pleasure to work with throughout this process. The City Council office, specifically Councilwoman Nuri Martinez, Jim D'Antona, Ackley Padilla, and the Panorama City community, who has been ardent supporters of this project, many of whom are here today. And finally, our team, Carol, Paulette, Jerry, David, Jay, Nigel, Billy, and Iran. We're incredibly excited about the opportunity to redevelop a blighted and underutilized site that has been fenced and vacant for almost 20 years in such a prominent location in the Valley and Panorama City. From the onset, almost 3 years ago, we began working with Milena, Councilwoman Nura Martinez's office, the community, and retailers to incorporate elements that were important to them and address any concerns that they had. The consistent theme was to finally redevelop this blighted and unsafe site, contribute towards the revitalization of Panorama City, and recapture its past prominence as a sought-after destination, act as a catalyst for future developments in Panorama City, increase quality housing and retail opportunities in Panorama City, develop a mixed-use community next to a transit corridor comprised of well-designed and contemporary housing options with great amenities, provide pedestrian active and viable retail along Roscoe and Tobias that is configured properly with high visibility and accessibility, provide a connection to the Panorama City Mall and any future developments across the street, and provide an inviting and accessible open green space that the residents and community can utilize and enjoy. We believe that we have carefully and thoughtfully addressed such requests and concerns and look forward to developing this project and contributing to the Panorama City community and Los Angeles as a whole. As it relates to the appeal, as stated by planning staff, the appeal does not raise any new issues from those raised to the City Planning Commission. The City Planning Commission thoroughly reviewed the appeal and concluded that it was wholly lacking in merit. There is substantial evidence in the record to support all of the findings required to be made by the City Council to certify the EIR and the project. The appeal does not raise any issues challenging any of the project's entitlement requests or the findings of the CPC in approving those requests and recommending approval of the zone change. We therefore respectfully ask that you deny the appeal. Separately, we have been working with the appellants to find feasible and financially responsible ways to include them in this project. We're available to answer any questions that you may have and would now like the opportunity to discuss our requested changes to the conditions.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Did you submit those?
I did.
Just now, or? Okay, we don't have the changes. Okay, but that's fine. You did, our clerk didn't receive them either. So did planning department receive them?
They were submitted to the council file on July 29th.
Okay. We'll ask our clerk to find them and circulate them to the committee members. Thank you. Go ahead.
Do you want me to go ahead and read them, or?
It's up to you. We'll review them, or you could.
Well, I think it's fairly self-explanatory, and I think Milena touched on it earlier. It seems as if there's really just the queue condition that should be discussed, my understanding. The requested changes were red lines to make it fairly easy for the committee to review and consider. So I guess what's the best and most efficient way of doing this?
It's up to you.
Okay.
You make the best use of your time, however you wish.
Okay. So the first condition is the queue condition regarding gray water. We submitted some red lines and some revisions to it, and would like that to be accepted as revised, which will state: the project shall install an operable reclaimed water pipe system for on-site water use to be served from collected rainwater and to be used as untreated subsurface irrigation for vegetation. That is the first request. The following requests are for the C conditions, and these are just clarifications. Condition B3, residential lobbies. We just want to add either Cedros Avenue or Tobias Avenue. C2, under wall openings, would like to end the sentence with "of the retail buildings." Regarding condition D11, these again are clarifying. D11A, B, it should say central residential building facing Tobias Avenue, not along Tobias Avenue. And C should say landscape plaza facing Tobias Avenue versus commercial areas along Tobias Avenue. That's it.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. So, the plan department, you've had a chance to review these proposed changes?
Yes.
Yes, and you are okay with them? Do they present any special issues?
This is Heather Blamers, Department of City Planning. With regard to the clarifications, we have reviewed those and are okay with those as submitted. However, the gray water condition is not what the City Planning Commission conditioned the project to include.
Okay, and is that of significance enough that we have to remand it to the commission?
No, it's not.
Our Director of Planning, Vince Bertoni, says it's not. Okay. And the City Attorney concur with that? Okay. But that's a new one for you. Have you had a chance to review it? Yes, okay. Okay, we'll continue now with public comment. And for speakers who signed up to speak on item number 11, we have Denise Mejia. Hold on one second. We have some speakers here who say 2, so they signed up for both? Yeah. Okay, majority of the speakers have signed up for both. Okay, but we are taking them now?
Yeah, we were taking them together so we could take them.
Okay, Denise Mejia. Ruelas, Tony Awelson. Is that, go ahead.
Hi, Denise Mejia.
Speakers have 1 minute.
Good afternoon, honorable members of the committee. I am Denise Mejia. I'm also a active member with Panama City Chamber. I'm a resident of the area and have grown up in that area in Panama City. This icon project is basically what it is. It's going to be an icon. The idea is to bring in something new, something that brings in the community together, and as well as bring the value in the properties and the area. The ongoing appeals just delays the process of something that is so needed in that community. Being somebody that's been there for many years and seeing what the plan and the design is, I think it would really be a compliment. It enhances the community. It brings in new business, and it helps with housing. In many areas, it's kind of capturing all areas that the community needs. So I'm very supportive of the project taking place, and hoping that we don't continue with the continuous appeals of just delaying something that is desperately needed in the area.
Thank you. Thank you. Officer Ruelas.
Good afternoon, Officer Ruelas, Mission Division LAPD. I keep it very brief, in my opinion, and this is why I support this project, by the way. In my opinion, as it stands, there's an old building there that's just inviting crime on a daily basis, and this includes, but not limited to, vandalism, illegal lodging, illegal dumping, gang activity, and this occurs on a daily basis. So any further delay in this project just makes it more difficult for us to deal with those situations. It will also have a very positive impact on the community, which will kickstart just a revamp of the entire neighborhood, which desperately needs it. That's why I support this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony Wilkinson, Ruth Landaverde.
I have 2 items to speak on, and I really want to be treated as fairly as the people who spoke earlier.
Okay, go right ahead.
Tony Wilkinson, I'm the Land Use Chair for the Panorama City Neighborhood Council, which strongly supports this project. I also want to say, with regard to my friends in the labor community that I deeply respect, who have talked about the focused on the number of housing units. This is a mixed-use project. And when we originally looked at this, thank you to ICON for coming to us before they filed it, we supported a substantially larger commercial section than actually is before you today. Nuri Martinez took a very close look at this project, significantly reduced the retail space, which significantly reduces the traffic during the day and all of those results. And also, where retail used to be, has a new open green space, which is a significant public amenity. So when we're talking about the impacts of this project, it's not just the number of units, it's the, and this is 1 minute, but
Yeah, one more.
Thank you. And I just want to make certain that everybody understands that this is not just a comment on the number of residence units. We have to look at what happened to the commercial. And I also think that the quality of the development that Ms. Martinez has put together, and this developer together with Prime Store and the adjacent parcel, have shown tremendous insight into the future of Panorama City. We'd like to support them, and I hope you support this project because it's really important to my community. Thank you.
Thank you. Ruth Landaverde, Carl Cruz, Marianne Jervis.
Okay. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Ruth Landaverde. I'm a housing specialist at People Assisting the Homeless, also known as PATH. I am here to support the approval for the development of the Icon at Panorama LLC. In this market, the rents are very high, as we all know, and housing our most vulnerable is nearly impossible. We've collaborated with this company for a few years, and they have supplied units for our participants that are experiencing homelessness. By approving this development, it will supply more units to help end homelessness in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Carl?
Hi, my name is Carl Cruz. I'm the senior pastor for Victory Outreach Northeast Valley. I also work as a family advocate for New Directions for Youth, and also lead the LAPD Mission Division Clergy Council. I am here to support this project because our community needs it. Just like the officer mentioned, there's quite a bit of issues with gangs, homelessness in that community. This project provides an opportunity for change, an opportunity for even our young people to get involved and possibly be employed and get the experience that maybe this project can bring into their lives. We desperately need a change, and I believe that this project would definitely will provide that change in such a dramatic way, especially on those particular streets where we're dealing with several gangs that are involved and are present at those locations. So I urge you to please support it. We definitely need it in our community. Thank you.
Marianne Jervis, Emily Roberts, Severiana Pablo.
Good afternoon, Council. I'm, as an LA resident and also Secretary of the Panorama City Chamber of Commerce, I'm in support of ICON because they have 45 years experience in solid construction, and they don't just buy properties to flip them. Billy Revelson and his team, they have a knack for enhancing communities, from downtown beautiful LA to various college campuses. He's an equal opportunity employer, and he wants to hire union and non-union employees, and will oversee all of the projects himself, which will assure safety and security to the planning stages all the way through to the building stages and design. He's going to bring 1,000 jobs into the community during construction. There will be ample parking. It's family-oriented living with upscale boutique shops. So he's creating a safe environment in Panorama City and assuring positive growth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Honorable and distinguished council member. My name is Emily Roberts. I'm the president of the Asian Real Estate Association of America and also the executive director and vice president of the Panorama Chamber of Commerce. I've been in the real estate industry for 29 years, and I am really in support of this ICON development. We know for a fact that there is shortage in our housing in this community, especially the San Fernando Valley, Los Angeles area, and even Santa Clarita. We need this development for your consideration because it is very important that this development was well thought and the developers are experienced enough for them to know the requirements of the city and also the requirements of the labor and the different departments. In short, that this will be a place for the community in Panorama City. It has all the amenities for the community. It is jobs. It is also walkability for people who are going to live there, work there, play there, and it is their advantage of this community and their advantage for the people. Hearing what Pat is saying here, it will help the homeless, which is a real problem in Los Angeles. This city needs to improve, and your approval of this project is very much needed. And please support this project. Our councilman, you're here to support us, and we are here to support whatever it is that you're doing. We appreciate you. Please approve this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Severiana Pablo, Bonfil, Olvia Diaz, Marta Cardona.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Severiana Pablo.
Un
Soy
moment.
voluntaria de la comunidad de Panorama.
Un momento, por favor. Mr. Mejia, can you interpret
Sure.
after she speaks, please?
Okay. Señora, ¿podría empezar otra vez?
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Severiana Pablo y estoy aquí dando el apoyo a esta magnífica.
Good afternoon. I'm here to support the project.
Sí, estoy a este magnífico proyecto que llegó a nuestra comunidad de Panorama City. Me agrada porque va a traer pues una mejor vista a nuestra calle que estaba olvidada, pero me imagino
Un
y
momento.
se ve la maqueta como está.
Un momento, señor. It's a great project, and it's going to bring a lot of positive things to Panorama City.
Sí, y también va a traer trabajo y es lo importante.
And it's also going to bring jobs, which is very important.
Me apoyo es para este proyecto.
and
Gracias.
my support is for the project.
Sí, buenas tardes.
Vengo a apoyar a Panorama City.
I'm here to support the Panorama City project,
El proyecto Panorama City.
the Panorama City project,
Ya que todo esté bien, que haya trabajos y todo.
and I want everyone to have jobs, and I'm supporting it.
Ya no esté mal el Panorama City para que esté bien.
She wants Panorama City to prosper.
Okay.
That's it.
Gracias.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Olvia Díaz. Yo vengo a apoyar este proyecto
Good afternoon. My name is Olvia Diaz, and I'm here to support the project.
porque traería excelentes cambios para
Wo-
la comunidad.
It will bring excellent changes to the community.
Por eso estamos pidiendo su apoyo para que sea posible que se realice este proyecto.
That's why we're asking for your support so that the project comes to fruition.
Sería un cambio excelente.
It'll be an excellent change.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Gracias.
Good afternoon. Senior Lead Officer Bonfil. I'm actually the senior lead assigned to this area in Panorama City. I just want to say we are in favor at the police department of this new development. This is an area that's been fenced off and vacant, and it's allowed and it's been inviting for narcotic activity, gang activity, transients, homeless encampments. We've actually had to clear this building. Squatters have set up numerous times before because it is vacant. It allows for that. I believe this project will positively impact the community that's been in dire need of change. It's going to create jobs. It will deter this activity that we've been combating for many, many years. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Renee Calderon, Danilo Guerra, Juan.
Sí.
Muy buenas tardes, mi nombre es René Calderón y vivo en la ciudad de Panorama City por los últimos 25 años.
Good
Y yo-
afternoon. I'm Rene Calderon. I've lived in Panorama City for the last 25 years.
Y todavía recuerdo la última vez que fui a comprar a Montgomery Ward antes que lo cerraran hace 25 años.
I remember going to the site where there was a Montgomery Ward, and I would shop there.
Y para mí es un placer que haya un edificio como este ahí, que se construya algo bueno para la ciudad que estuvo abandonado por 25 años.
And I'm looking forward to a new commercial site there since it's been abandoned for 25 years.
Y la comunidad de Panorama City estamos contentos con este proyecto y esperamos a todos los concejales que aprueben este proyecto. Muchas gracias a todos.
We're happy for this project, and we want all the council members to support it.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me. I am Danilo Guerra. I am a resident of Panorama City for 13 years already. I was pretty much raised there. I literally live like a couple blocks, like 30 seconds away from this, and I support this greatly for the reason that it's personal to me. Being lived there, I've never seen it with lights on until Billy has come and put lights on. So the first time I actually see it up and running for me is something amazing. And then I can show my nephews that there is something there. There is going to be buildings. It's going to be moving, and they don't have to be afraid that there's crime there. How it's personal to me is because I pass by there, I always see drugs, prostitution, everything. You want it there, you go there. Besides being that fact is that I got robbed there too. Now I'm so glad there's lights. All the criminals run like cockroaches. It's completely better now. Billy painted. Billy put business there. It's up and moving, and I'm really, really excited to see it actually bring business, bring life to that spot, that 20-year-old dead spot. Thank you.
Juan, Sol Mejia, David Curtis.
Good afternoon. My name is Juan Carlos Plasencia. I am the second vice president of the Panama City Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here to support the Icon Panorama project. the Icon Panorama project, I believe it will bring something better to our community, to Panorama City. I've been living there all my life. I believe that providing that to our community will provide something better for our name, Panorama City, because people, it's sad, but really, when it comes to that, when people want to go shopping, when they want to go to the mall, or when they want to go somewhere with their friends, they usually say they want to go to the Northridge Mall, to Panga Mall, something like that, etc. You know, so I believe something like that will help out our community, apart from, you know, providing a nice environment for people to hang out. I believe that they will provide a park there as well to bring your children and family and friends to hang over there. And also, as people have mentioned, they will bring more opportunities for jobs, because I believe that they do they do require, our community does require more job opportunities for people, young people, as well as, you know, everybody else. And yeah, I fully support this. Hopefully you guys will as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Saul Mejia, President for the Panorama City Chamber of Commerce, but more than that, a resident since 1989 in Panorama City. More than that, an activist since 1991. So I've been attending a couple of thousand meetings ever since, and the reason why I bring that up is because the people that are opposing this, they never showed up to any of our meetings. I was a member of the Panorama City Neighborhood Council for 9 years, and I sat on the Land Use Committee meeting from the beginning, and I saw the developer come from day one. They show up, they listen to what the community had to say, they listen to every single whining and complaining from every single person, and they considered it. They make the changes based upon the input they got from the community. It was not their idea. It was not simply because they had friends or somebody liked them. No, this is the community going up in arms and giving them a hard time, just like they did to you today. It's simply they're willing to work with the community, they're willing to listen, they're willing to sit there every single month. Yes, Billy also is a board member, so he said, and no, we do not endorse anybody, but they sit there and listen to what we have to say, how we feel about our community. My first job was the Montgomery Wards. So trust me, I know the building very well from up, down. I can give you a tour with my eyes blinded. This is a very personal issue. I love this community. This is my community. This is where I grew up. This is where I went to middle school, high school, and even college while living in that community. I live 2 blocks away from this property, and I've seen what it can be. Crime, dirt, prostitution, alcoholism, drugs. We need an improvement. Please, please support this project. It will bring jobs, and not just labor jobs. It will bring jobs for the real people who live within the community and every day get up to try to make a better living. So I believe there is something that will bring incredible impact in the community. Safety, cleanness, lighting, jobs, and it will make a lot of people happy in our community. Please, please support this. Thank you.
David Curtis, Jay Blatter, Eduardo Cadden.
Good afternoon. My name is David Curtis. I'm a licensed civil engineer at SOMAS, working with Aaron Fields and Icon Panorama. I'm here to speak regarding the condition QA7 gray water. We ask that the words on-site non-potable water sources such as showers, wash basins, or laundry be replaced by the words collected rainwater. We ask that this change be considered as the project's use for gray water collection is limited to only subsurface irrigation for vegetation. The creation of gray water from the previously listed sources would far outpace the irrigation demands and ultimately cause any collected gray water be wasted to the sanitary sewer system soon after the holding tank is filled. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jay Blatter, principal with Hockhauser Blatter Architecture and Planning. I'm really more available to answer questions. Our firm is really proud of the design and planning of this project and the inclusive process with staff and neighbors. And we're here to answer any questions you have about the design as you go through your questions and deliberations. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Councilman and woman. My name is Eduardo Cadena. I'm the Executive Manager at Palmas Chamber of Commerce. And I'm supporting this project because, like my co-workers said, it's going to bring a lot of jobs to the community. plus going to bring more housing for our local residents. As a Panorama City resident, I've been living there for 32 years, and I see Panorama City at its highest and its lowest. And I think this is going to be a great project that's going to revive Panama City once again. I want future generations to see what Panama looked like back in the days where I grew up, where you could actually walk down the street, enjoy yourself, go to your favorite restaurant or favorite store. I just want that for future generations to know that. Thank you very much. Have a blessed day.
Thank you. Ackley Padilla from Council District 6.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. Obviously, Council Member Martinez is very excited about what this project can mean for the community. Just asked me to come by the committee here to let you know we are in support of the Planning Department's recommendations and moving this item forward to the Council for full consideration. And we're also here in support of the applicant's request for some of the changes to the conditions in the initial recommendations. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So, questions for the staff. There was one of the appellant's representatives testified that there was a new project proposed that wasn't reviewed. Can you comment on that, please?
Sure. This is Melina Sasajo with the Planning Department. So CEQA allows for decision makers the ability to adopt different mitigations or alternatives to the project, which reduce impacts, and that's what this project as proposed does. So in the final EIR, an alternative 5 was proposed, and to be clear, that did not introduce any new uses and any new impacts. The appellant is completely misrepresenting the project by saying that it is increased by 50%. What the alternative really was an increase of 50% in the residential units, and then about a quarter of the commercial component was proposed. So that was a large reduction in the commercial component. Overall, the project resulted in reduced impacts. Specifically, the appellant talked about air quality. Their air quality modeling that they submitted was based on improper inputs and assumptions. We submitted a July supplemental study for the air quality impacts, which showed that the proposed project would actually reduce impacts as compared to the original, which had potentially significant NOx and VOC impacts. Those would no longer be significant under this revised project. So those are reduced. In addition, the greenhouse gas emissions were reduced. The appellant is utilizing an unadopted 3,000 metric ton threshold, which is not adopted by the AQMD. And our documents clearly demonstrate that the project would be in line with all greenhouse gas reduction policies. It would also not have as great of traffic impacts as the original project also.
Okay, and in terms of the issues raised with respect to CEQA, and he cited some items that are above the threshold of significance, those were adequately analyzed?
Yes, so as stated, the air quality modeling that they presented was inaccurate and overstated the air quality impacts. Our specific studies showed that this project would have less than significant impacts in terms of exceeding thresholds, and it would not exceed any greenhouse gas thresholds. It would be in line with all greenhouse gas reduction policies.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on this item? No? Okay, given the recommendation by our planning department and the recommendation recommendation from the Planning Commission and the local council district that have all been consistent to a move to deny the appeals and adopt the amendments from the applicant. Any objection to those items for both items 11 and 12? Anything else to add, Mr. Mejia?
No, just to adopt the environmental findings and the mitigation monitoring program.
Okay, we'll incorporate
and
that.
the statement of overriding considerations.
Can we also just add to clarify under the track map appeal to include the haul route?
Okay, we'll incorporate that as well into the motion. Any objections?
And also city attorney is whispering here, the errata.
All right, we'll add that. Any objections to that? Seeing none, so ordered. Thank you. Okay, now moving back to item number 5. We had testimony by the neighborhood council. We also heard from our planning department. Does the applicant for this project and/or the local council district wish to speak on this item? Jordan Barukim, are you here for number 5? Not here. Okay, we're going to hold this item again. We apologize. I was told that the local council district wishes to speak on this item, and unless they speak on this item, we're going to move on this item as we wish. Jordan? Okay.
Good afternoon. Members of the Plum Committee, Jordan Barukim here from Council President Herb Weston's office. We're here today with just a few comments. Our understanding is one and the same as the planning department's. There was a hearing officer hearing held here back in February, followed by a subsequent Area Planning Commission hearing. When reviewing the minutes from the Central Area Planning Commission hearing, you'll see that the only members who were in attendance were the planning commissioners as well as members of the planning department. Additionally, there was a 15-day appeal window for anyone from the public to appeal. Additionally, members of the neighborhood council also do receive the copy of the determination. And I do want to add that there was a parallel case associated with this. There was the height district change, and then there was the concurrent case for the vesting tentative track map. So essentially, there were several opportunities here to appeal the case. Unfortunately, we were told of some opposition earlier this morning. However, given the late stage of the project, it is 2 years in the making. Additionally, it looks like the Ellis Act applications have already been filed. In our discussions with planning department, it only looks like one of those units were eligible for Ellis Act. Additionally, if the committee would like to hold the item for additional time, we're happy to do that, although I don't know how much that would achieve because the crux of the issue doesn't circle around the design, the massing, the scale, the density of the project. In other words, these aren't matters that can be addressed by architectural issues. Rather, it seems to be an issue with the existing housing stock. And like I said, unfortunately, it seems like the deed has already been done in terms of the Ellis acting. And if you have any additional questions, I'm here. Or if you have any more questions for planning department.
Okay, and are you or staff aware of whether the people who were Ellis, if they received their relocation fees?
Sure. This is Jen from Planning again. Stepped out and was able to make a quick call to HCID to verify all the information. So it looks like pursuant to the Ellis Act, the project owner submitted documentation in July of 2016. And it looks like, so at that time, they established that there was one active tenant in the units, although 6 units were RSO units. There was one tenant. And that individual did receive consultation, relocation consultation, and relocation benefits. The specifics of that is confidential, but they were able to confirm that they received their proper.
Great, thanks. And we need to clarify with the planning department and HCID because we've had similar cases in the past where we are approving projects at this point in the game and at the council level, and we are not aware of whether people have been the Ellis Act has been fully complied with. We've had some instances where tenants come and say they have not been given their relocation assistance. And so I think I put in a motion to correct that somehow, that HCID needs to be notified of these so that if there's a planning change, we are aware of those cases, and we approved that motion. So somehow, although we approved the motion, we have not corrected an error here. And the reason we do that is because we don't want to approve any project where the applicant has not complied with the Alice Act. I know, despite the fact that, yes, the project stands on its own merits, we certainly don't want, if somebody is deficient in following relocation and all the other benefits to the tenants, we don't want to, we want to make sure that's been complied with. So maybe I'll ask our CLA to look into that and work with the planning department and HCID
Sure,
to make
we
sure
can
that.
do a search on the
I think
council index and find out what happened to the file.
I think we ask for something in our files and the applications, if it comes to the reports, to come when they get to this point, for us to be aware of that. So.
Sure, and if I may just clarify, a lot of times, we have a lot of just track maps that get processed and don't, they're not before you at the table because they're not appealed. Yeah. And typically, if there are units there, it is a standard condition of approval that they go to HCID. But a project applicant can hand an approval in hand that is good for 10 years, so they cannot, they can move forward at a much later date. Yeah. And so the way we safeguard it is to condition them so that they have to go to HCID before they can proceed with any project permits or before they could even record their map.
I see.
So, okay. But that's something that we could, of course, look into actually having additional documentation into the file if they did, go so forth to vacate the units prior to application. But again, that is a condition of approval, so we're safeguarded in that regard.
Okay, great, thank you. So we'll get a report back from the CLA's office of Mr. Mejia on the status of that motion. And
we'll search and find out what the status of that file is.
And if in fact we passed it in practice, we need to make sure that our reports give us this type of information in the reports rather than verbally, so.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. So with that, are there any other questions? Okay, we'll move to approve this item and move it on forward. Anything I need to add?
No, Councilman, just approving the project.
Okay.
There's not an appeal before you.
So we'll move it without objection. So ordered. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and now we'll move on to item number 6.
Item 6, Councilman, it's a report from the Cultural Heritage Commission relative to the inclusion of the Talbot Wood double dwelling as a historic cultural monument.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council members. Ken Bernstein with the Palmas City Planning and Office of Historic Resources. Just a quick word of background on items 6 through 9. You have before you 4 historic cultural monument nominations in Hollywood. All are within the vicinity of the Crossroads of the World, which is an existing historic cultural monument. There were 5 nominations considered concurrently by the Cultural Heritage Commission. A 5th, the Fritz Cottage on North Macadam Place, was unanimously denied by the commission, and therefore that has not advanced to council. The other 4 are before you today. There was a 6th as well, the Hollywood Reporter Building, that was previously acted upon by the commission and council. Item 6, the Talbot Wood double dwelling, is a 2-story duplex on Las Palmas between Hollywood Boulevard and Selma Avenue in Hollywood that was constructed in 1916. The Cultural Heritage Commission determined it met 2 of the Cultural Heritage Ordinance criteria. First, as a rare example of a multifamily residential structure in early post-consolidation Hollywood, and secondly, for its architecture as a noteworthy and intact example of a multifamily residential property designed in the Craftsman architectural style. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Move now to the, I have Charles. Okay. So who's the representative you wish to speak on this? You wanted Anna Brooks or Charles Fisher? Welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Anna Marie Brooks, and
Okay.
Many believe that the Talbot Wood double dwelling, sited on the front of a parking lot, once a verdant lawn, was moved to the current location on Las Palmas. That could not be more wrong. It is the earliest survivor on the block, built in 1915 for Elsie Talbot, a Hollywood dress designer. It was not the first building erected for her by designer Howard W. Wood. In fact, their creative and financial shared work in Hollywood and Los Feliz led to a lifelong relationship after Wood divorced the daughter of Mr. McCadden, a very well-known Hollywood developer who also happened to be in business with Mr. Wood. Wood went on to design works for many others, including the since-demolished Methodist Church on Hollywood Boulevard. The Craftsman shingle two-story duplex is a mirror image at the exterior, with one unit on the first floor and the other on the second. On city inspection day, I was amazed to see more contact paper on the walls than I'd seen during my entire undergraduate career of the 60s. However, acres of original woodwork were still in place, as was the fireplace and the break front. The wood floor was preserved by vinyl floor covering, and art glass windows cast colored reflections of period flowers on the walls and floor. Following 82 years as a double dwelling, the use of the Talbot wood was converted to a business duplex, but the duplex retains its original Craftsman shingle details. Please allow this 102-year-old building to remain as the surviving Craftsman shingle double dwelling of early consolidated Hollywood. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The next speaker is Charles Fisher.
I had already voiced my support for this one and the other two nominations. I will be speaking on number 8 more extensively.
Okay. That concludes public comment on this item. Do we have the local council member representative here?
Good afternoon. My name is Craig Bullock, and I'm with Councilmember Mitch O'Farrell's office. This potential resource is part of a larger project that is currently going through a city-administered process. The building has been treated as a historic resource for that purpose. As such, the council office would like to understand and know the outcome of that process prior to undertaking any actions today. The city has broad discretion of whether or not it designates a structure. As such, the council office is not supportive of putting the Talbot Wood double dwelling on the city's historic cultural monument list. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public testimony. Yes? Okay, I don't have you listed here. What's your name?
Kendra Casper.
And you're the representative for Crossroads?
Yes, for Linda Dutton-Haber and Crossroads Property.
Okay, go right ahead. Thank you.
Good afternoon, honorable council members. My name is Kendra Casper. I'm with DLA Piper. I represent the landowner. We support the council member decision. In the testimony that you've heard today, you heard people talk about this building being part of a broader project, and we would also like to see this particular dwelling looked at in the context of the project as a whole. We're going through the process now. We've done a CEQA process for this as well, so we would like to be able to continue along with that process, work with the council member and the community on dealing with these historic issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Great, thank you. So any other, any questions or comments? No? Yes, Mr. Bloomfield?
Yeah,
Is there anything that makes this building unique compared to others within the early days after the consolidation in Hollywood?
And Ken Bernstein, Department of City Planning. The staff report and the Cultural Heritage Commission did find that this is both a very rare example of a early multifamily building in Hollywood from the teens, the immediate years when Hollywood became part of the city of Los Angeles, and a rare example of craftsman architecture being applied not to a single-family home but to a multifamily home. So it was distinctive under both of those factors. Some of the other nominations that are before you today, the Commission did not find, while certain findings were met, in other cases, a number of the criteria that had been asserted, the Commission did not find those were met, including examples where both staff and the Commission did not find it rose to the level of being an exceptional example of craftsman architecture, for example. But this one, the Commission did find met both of those criteria as an example of multifamily residential development and as an example of craftsman architecture in multifamily development.
Was there any events, or was the architecture of note in any way?
Events that
was there any like historic events associated with this, or
no? The Commission did not find it was associated with historic events or with a master architect. Again, there are multiple criteria under the Cultural Heritage Ordinance. In this case, the Commission found it did meet two, really for its significance in terms of broad patterns of history, not a single event, and for its being an excellent example of its architectural style.
I appreciate that. I mean, I do feel sometimes we nominate anything and everything, and then that devalues the things that we do nominate. But appreciate the comments. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So with that, in light of the testimony from the local council office and the record, we'll move to disapprove the inclusion of the Talbot Wood double dwelling. Anything else, Mr. Mejia?
It was to approve, right, Councilman? I don't know if I misheard you.
Disapprove the inclusion, so.
To disapprove?
The nomination.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Great, thank you. Any objections to that? Seeing none, so ordered. Next item, item number 7.
Item 7, Councilman, this is a report from the Cultural Heritage Commission relative to the inclusion of the major Kunkel bungalow as a historic cultural monument in CD 13.
Okay.
Again, Ken Bernstein, Department of City Planning. The Major Kunkel Bungalow is a one-story single-family residence located on McCadden Place between Sunset and Selma in Hollywood. The property was constructed in 1910. It's a craftsman-style residence, originally occupied by Major Harry Kunkel, who resided at the property until 1916. In this case, the Cultural Heritage Commission found that the nomination met one of the Cultural Heritage Ordinance criteria as a rare example of the single-family residences prevalent in Hollywood prior to its annexation by the city of Los Angeles, this being a very early residence in Hollywood from 1910. In this case, this was not found to be significant for association with historic personages or as an example of craftsman architecture, but it did meet one of the historic cultural monument criteria. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Anna Brooks.
I would like to correct Mr. Bernstein. The council found it historic also for the person who built it, who was Lieutenant Kunkel, who became Major Kunkel.
Let me just I stand corrected. That is, there were amended findings by the commission that did cite Harry Kunkel for his role as the first air pollution controller in the city. So I apologize for omitting that.
Okay.
Thank you. In 1910, when Harry Kunkel was a lieutenant in the National Guard, he added the Craftsman Bungalow on McCadden Place, then known as Bonita. Hollywood was still an independent city, more like a rural village where people knew each other by first names. Silent film did not yet exist in Hollywood. Alcohol was legally forbidden by the founders of the Hollywood, who were staunch supporters of the Women's Christian Temperance Union. The lieutenant served in France as a pilot during World War I, returning to the USA as Major Kunkel, an engineer who became the first air smog controller in this city's history with an amazing PR sense. Kunkel went on to a similar position with the county. He was a consultant throughout the nation and Canada. When this historian was photographing the exterior of the now doctor's office, I encountered a couple of patients who had heard the building was threatened. They recounted how much visiting the doctor in this tranquil setting meant to them. They were asked to come speak on the building's behalf, but were too intimidated to do so. On city inspection day, this historian saw the interior of Major Kunkel's bungalow for the first time. I was astounded. All of the oak paneling was beautifully polished. The fireplace, the oak and leaded glass break front were perfect. The living room, dining room, front room, kitchen, bathroom, and bedrooms looked as though Major Kunkel had stepped out for the afternoon, the maid just having burnished the bungalow to a perfect military sheen. This 108-year-old craftsman interior is one of the most intact I have witnessed in Southern California. The Major Kunkel bungalow must be respected and preserved. Please allow it to remain as an icon to the original city of Hollywood. Thank you.
Thank you. Kendra Casper.
Good afternoon, honorable council members. Kendra Casper, DLA Piper. I represent the landowner. As I stated previously, we'd like to be able to look at this structure as well as part of the project as a whole. We've studied this this resource as well as the other potential resources in our CEQA document. In the CEQA document, we have treated them as historic resources to afford them protections during that CEQA process. We'd like to continue to move forward in that process. Also, we just wanted to note on this house, this might be an early example, but there are also several other examples of this same sort of architecture in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Craig Bullock.
Good afternoon. My name is Craig Bullock. I'm with Councilmember Mitch O'Farrell's office. This structure, like the Talbot Wood double dwelling, is part of a larger project that we would like to see the process continue. We will evaluate that at the time. Therefore, at this time, we are not supportive of adding the Major Kunkel bungalow as a historic cultural monument. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Blumenfield?
Yeah, I've never heard of Major Kunkel before. If you could tell me a little bit about why an association with him would demand landmarking of this building, and where's the threshold for this? Because this comes up a lot in issues where we take folks who have some, everyone's part of history, but how do you cross that line to make someone's association this historic that would warrant landmarking?
No, thank you. And I apologize, I omitted the discussion initially of Major Kunkel. The commission had considerable additional testimony when this was before the Cultural Heritage Commission about Major Kunkel, and he was the first air pollution controller for the city of Los Angeles. He was selected as the head by LA County of really the first air pollution district, the first effort to measure and understand and control smog emissions in the city during the 1940s and 1950s. And he began to measure the smog output of automobiles, convinced major industries to introduce smog arresting devices, and was the kind of a pioneer nationally as well in emission control and smog the fight against smog in Los Angeles. The criteria under the Cultural Heritage Ordinance cites, is the site identified with historic personages or with important events in the main currents of national, state, or local history. And the commission felt that the identification of this home with Major Kunkel and his role in combating air pollution in Los Angeles met that association was strong enough to warrant additional designation under that criterion.
And him as a historic personage
Yes.
is somehow, I don't know, it seems like nothing against Major Kunkel. I'm sure he did some great things, but it seems like for landmarking purposes, that's a pretty low bar. I mean, almost anybody at that era, a lot of people, I guess, would qualify. Maybe I'm imagining the bar a little, should be a little higher. And are there other, it was mentioned there are other examples of craftsman style. How many other examples are there?
In this case, the staff as well as the commission did not find this eligible as an example of craftsman style architecture. It did find it as a rare example of pre-annexation residences in Hollywood, that this predated Hollywood becoming part of the city of Los Angeles.
Okay, so we'll move to, in light of the testimony from the council office and the file, we'll move to disapprove the nomination. Any objection? See no objections, so ordered. Item number 8.
Item 8, Councilman, this is a report from the Cultural Heritage Commission relative to the inclusion of Selma Las Palmas Courtyard Apartments as a historic cultural monument in CD 13.
Charlie Fisher.
Good afternoon, Charlie Fisher, 140 South Avenue 57, Highland Park. I wrote the nomination on this particular property, and I might add that for the Art Deco Society, I also did the nomination for the Hollywood Reporter building, which is within the project site, and the Red Wine building, which is just outside of the project site on Las Palmas. This particular apartment building, I won't go into the architecture. I think the architecture certainly speaks for itself. The building is an excellent example of Hollywood, of the Hollywood Moderne that came out in the 1930s and went on into the early 1950s. It's a very important part of Hollywood. But the other part of Hollywood is the fact that it was built to be affordable housing. A lot of it was built partly as housing for people who were in the industry, not the big stars and all, but the people who were behind the scenes. Ben Weingart, the developer of this project, it was built under his company, Consolidated Hotels Incorporated, and it was built by his other subsidiary, which was the Aetna Construction Company that went on to be one of the major players in the San Fernando Valley after World War II, as well as the principal developer of the city of Lakewood. Weingart came to Los Angeles as a young man, worked as a dishwasher in one of the hotels downtown, and then he got enough money together to buy his first building, which was a rundown hotel along Skid Row. He continued to purchase properties as he began to build up his real estate empire. Interesting note that he retained those buildings along Skid Row as hotels, residential hotels. And somebody asked him years later, so why do you keep all those old buildings on Skid Row? And he says, the poor need a place to live. Ben Weingart was very much an advocate of affordable housing. And the Selma Las Palmas Apartments was an example of affordable housing that he put together with dignity. It is a wonderful place as far as the design layout with the large courtyards, the two square buildings, as well as the half courtyard building on the north. This particular project was one of Weingart's favorites. He went on to form the Weingart Foundation in the early 1950s, a foundation that has distributed over $500 million in grants to various charity and projects over the years and is still in business to this day. Ben Weingart retained ownership of this apartment complex until his death in 1980, and eventually it was sold about 5 years later. But this was obviously one of his favorite buildings, or I should say 3 buildings. This particular one is probably one of the quintessential representatives of old Hollywood. I've heard stories that the idea was to bring the Las Vegas experience. What about the old Hollywood experience? These buildings have been landmarks for years. They have been called out as eligible for the National Register in more than one survey. And we are here to preserve these buildings. And okay, I've still got a minute left, but I just want to wrap this thing up and point out that Hollywood is an icon for Los Angeles. And the housing in Hollywood is also one of the most important parts of its history. Preserving the history of Hollywood is preserving the housing of Hollywood, and more importantly, I think here we also preserve the legacy of Ben Weingart, who had these buildings built as an example of how to do affordable housing that with dignity. Thank you.
Thank you. Anna Brooks. You're Margot, right? Yeah, you're also listed to speak. If you want to go first, go ahead.
Thank you for hearing this case today. My name is Margot Gerber. I'm the president of the Art Deco Society. And actually, the way we came to nominate these apartments was we were walking with the Cultural Heritage Commission on another walkthrough for a building in the neighborhood, which we didn't get into that day. And they discovered the apartments, which I was aware of because I work in the neighborhood. And they were enamored with them. They encouraged us to nominate them. The LA Conservancy actually launched a campaign called We Love Garden Apartments in 2012 to call attention to this vanishing form of attractive and affordable housing from the 20th century. On their website, I quote, "With low density and vast open space, historic garden apartments are increasingly vulnerable to demolition or excessive alteration. This complex is the last of its kind in Hollywood. Garden apartments are absolute icons of the Southern California lifestyle. They also represent important social history in the United States, a time when architecturally significant buildings were constructed for the lower and middle class, so they would have a nice place to live. While these were never public housing, this complex was built so that in a moment when city planners were looking at offering a healthy lifestyle with indoor-outdoor living for the lower and middle classes." And my time's up, so I'll say goodbye.
Great. Thank you. Anna Brooks, Darren Wilstead, Ara Valenzuela, Kevin Atterbury.
Although this historian had driven by these apartments hundreds of times over the last 27 years and cutting from Hollywood Boulevard to Sunset and vice versa, I must admit to having not looked closely at the two-story, 2.5 building grouping, other than to note that it was designed in the Hollywood Regency style. At the CHC hearings, I came to a pleasant surprise that what appeared to be merely apartments were, in fact, garden court apartments. At the city inspection, we entered through metal gates, traveling past patterned tiles onto sidewalks that cut across the verdant courtyard with mature landscaping. We stood amidst this collection of 80 units, each with its individual theme and variation of Hollywood Regency elements of style. We were standing in an example of the city always supports courtyard apartments. This is an illustration not of units from the teens or 20s, but from the late 30s.
Thank you.
Please support this.
Darren Wilstead, Ara Valenzuela, Kevin Atterbury.
Good afternoon, honorable council members. My name is Darren Wilstead, and I'm a resident. I'm actually at Crossroads, and I can't tell you how much I am in support of this. Not because I'm a resident, but because I have enjoyed what they were just talking about, the garden-style apartments. Through that garden style, I have so much peace every morning. There are all these birds that come out and have coffee with us. Not only that, but I've actually become very well acquainted. I'm not usually a very social person where I live in the apartment buildings, but it's become something that we have to do. We see each other, we walk out the door every day, and now I'm pretty much uncle to that little baby in the back, little Zoe, who slobbered all over me today. But not only that, I have to say I love the location too. I walk to the gym, I walk to the ArcLight, walk to the subway. It's ideal. And then inside of my apartment, I've got some amazing woodwork that I don't think I've been able to find in any other apartments. We've got the molding, we've got these antique doorknobs, huge closets, and just thinking of looking for another place to live. I have looked, and that's not out there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Owen Valenzuela. I'm also a resident of the apartments there. I do want to actually just stress, I can't stress enough about the courtyard. It's kind of like walking into your own zen zone. And that's not something that I could find in any of these new apartment complexes. It's just something that gives you a peace of mind after you've had like a very stressful day. Like Darren mentioned, you can walk basically anywhere. You can do your market, your grocery shopping. I do have a little girl, so I can walk with her to the park anywhere. The green that you just see in the courtyard and the flowers and trees that we're able to see that I wouldn't be able to see in another apartment complex. And yeah, that's really it. I'm kind of at a loss for words, so I'm done.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Kevin Atterbury. I've been a resident at the Las Palmas Apartments for the last 15 years, and I'm a testimonial to the condition and environment of these apartments. I've lived in 2 of these units, and they don't make courtyard-style apartment buildings anymore. The courtyard environment brings together a sense of community. Everyone knows each other, and everyone knows their neighbors. And today's apartment design is very isolated. People don't know their neighbors or what's going on in their building, and that's very disheartening and kind of depressing. But these apartments, however, are in great shape, if not in excellent shape. They were built really well. All the units have crown molding throughout, stainless steel countertops in the kitchen, along with very intricate detailed woodwork along the kitchen cabinets. And some units still have the galley doors between the kitchen and the dining rooms. All units have paneled closets and bedroom doors throughout with the original doorknobs. And they have large closets and large windows. In fact, my first apartment had a walk-in closet that was so large, I almost converted it to a den. But depending on the units, some of them have ornate designs above the front doors, and all units have decorative woodwork around the door jambs. So, and as you can see on this design, both buildings have, beautiful detailed work on each entry, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. James Courtway, John Hofferman, Stephen Luftman.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is James Courtway, and I'm a resident of Hollywood. I knew a man that lived in these buildings that had moved in 1975. I used to listen to the stories of not only Hollywood, but the building early on. He told me that Raymond Burr used to live in this building. If you don't know who he is, he played Perry Mason, he played Ironside, he was a very famous actor. It was an apartment that was just across from where we were. This destruction of this building is not just destroying the structure, it's destroying Hollywood history. That's what Hollywood is founded on. This building was there during Hollywood's golden era. The developers want to destroy these buildings and build a luxury apartment or a luxury hotel. The people that are going to be filling that hotel are coming here to see Hollywood, and Hollywood is made out of history, and it's ironic that they want to destroy it. These buildings, the walls talk. They're talking through me, they're talking through all of the people that are here. So please consider landmarking this building. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, John Hofferman. I don't need to add too much to what everyone else has said. I just wanted to go on record as supporting the proposal to designate the apartments. My understanding also is that Councilman O'Farrell's office has supported the nomination in the past, and we're hoping they're going to continue to support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Luftman, Kendra Casper.
Stephen Luftman. Good afternoon, council members. The CRA, the OHR, and the CHC all agree that these quality historic buildings meet the criteria of an HCM. They are outstanding buildings. They embody the distinguishing characteristics of the Hollywood Regency architectural style and are notable examples of courtyard housing. I ask that you act not politically, that you ignore any backroom deals, that you act responsibly and affirm the Cultural Heritage Commission's decision to add these buildings to the list of historic cultural monuments. Thank you.
Thank you. Kendra, and then Craig Bullock.
Good afternoon, honorable council members. My name is Kendra Casper with DLA Piper. I represent the landowner. I just wanted to make a few statements about these courtyard-style apartments. We don't believe these are an excellent example. Number one and number two, there are several. I have a list about 50 comparable apartment buildings. I'll just give you the addresses of the several that are already HCMs. 1471 through 1475 Havenhurst Drive, 4600 through 4604 Los Feliz Boulevard, 1840 Grace Avenue, 5200 Franklin Avenue, 817 through 823 North Hayward Avenue, 350 North Sycamore Avenue, 1721 North Sycamore Avenue. Those are just those that are already monuments. There are several others comparable that have been listed in survey. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Craig Bullock with Councilmember Mitch O'Farrell's office. As with the other buildings nominated we've heard this afternoon, they are part of a larger project that is being administered through a city process. And there are similar apartments and garden styles around the city of Los Angeles. At this point, we are not supportive of the Selma Las Palmas Courtyard Apartments being added to a historic cultural monument until that process is finished. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, so we'll move to, in light of the testimony from the council office and the record, we'll move to disapprove the nomination. Any objections to that? Seeing none, so ordered. Next item, item number 9.
Item 9, Councilman, this is a report from the Cultural Heritage Commission relative to the inclusion of the Bollinger Building as a historic cultural monument.
Okay. Anna Brooks.
Actually, before I begin speaking on this one, our attorney has asked that I ask a question to be answered after we finish this last one, which is how will these requests taken as part of the larger project that were not approved finally be treated? And we'd like to know that after the fact. The Bollinger Building at the corner of Sunset and Las Palmas was designed in 1923 by architect Royale Jones in commercial vernacular style. He created commercial apartment buildings and residences from Hollywood to Hancock Park to South LA in many styles and varying heights, including the Lynn Manor at 6400 Franklin Avenue in the left center of the graphic. The Bollinger is the earliest surviving commercial building on the 6600 block of Sunset, which hosts the latter added Catholic Church, school, and crossroads of the world. It was the first to arrive, and the Bollinger shall dominate its corner into the next century. The Bollinger is one of a rapidly vanishing breed of corner-oriented commercial buildings in Hollywood. It hosted restaurants, a tea room, photo studios, a hair salon which held forth for decades, and an event brokerage, as well as a commercial billboard which occupied its roof for several years and can be seen in the left center of the graphic. The building was created under the original ownership of Willis Hiram Bollinger, a real estate broker who completed 99-year leases in downtown LA in the teens and 20s, was a mining entrepreneur and bon vivant. as a building for creatives. Generations of musicians, screenwriters, advertising copywriters, other artists, and now computer-based artists still maintain the gracious second-level arched ceiling salons, dominated along Sunset by originally open brick arches with interior French doors and natural wrought iron balustrades. Less prominent details still surviving are the kitchens and bathrooms. Today, it is one of few surviving creative incubators in Hollywood. Every inch of the Bullinger supports the Hollywood dream of bringing to fruition one's creative fantasies in a balmy, light-filled environment. Please allow the 95-year-old Bullinger building to continue inspiring and fostering the reality of dreams of successive generations of Hollywood creatives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I'm also on behalf of the applicant, and I'd just like to use the remaining time, if that's okay.
Sure. What is your name?
Liza Brereton.
And you're with who?
I'm on behalf of the applicant for 6, 7, and 9. And I just want to reiterate our question that it's very unclear to us what both the developer and owner and Council O'Farrell's office mean by denying these at this point and taking them up as part of the larger process. We'd like some clarification on what that looks like, how these buildings might actually be protected or impacted as part of the larger process. And we expect that you're likely to deny the nomination of 9 in a minute. So if you could please clarify that, because we really don't understand, and I'm sure that the applicant for number 8 would also like to know that information. Thank you.
Thank you. And you're affiliated with what organization? 8 Healthcare Foundation, okay. Adrian Scott Fine, Anna Evans Goldstein.
Good afternoon, council members. Adrian Scott Fine with the Los Angeles Conservancy. We are here to support this item. Working closely with the project applicant, the council office, we want to ensure meaningful preservation as part of the Crossroads project undertaking. The Conservancy, along with Hollywood Heritage and others, are pressing for preservation and reuse of the Bullinger building. Its integration within the project is readily possible as a win-win alternative, and HCM, Historic Cultural Monument status, we believe will ensure a design review process and protection going forward. As one of the oldest surviving commercial buildings along this stretch of Sunset, we are urging and asking that you support this nomination and adopt the CHC's findings. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anna Evans Goldstein. I'm here with Unite Here Local 11, and I would like to support the preservation and landmarking of the Bullinger building. Thank you.
Thank you. Kendra Casper, Craig Bullock.
Good afternoon, honorable council members. Kendra Casper, DLA Piper, representing the landowner. Like I stated with the other potential resources that we're talking about today, we would like to move forward with the project and deal with the resource as part of the project. I would also just like to highlight that the staff report that went to the Cultural Heritage Commission for this building deemed that it was actually not eligible at this time. So I just wanted to make it a point that staff actually did not believe this building was eligible. Thank you.
Thank you. Craig Bullock.
Good afternoon. My name is Craig Bullock. I'm with Councilmember Mitch O'Farrell's office. The council office actually concurred with the Department of City Planning's recommendation report to the Cultural Heritage Commission. And the report stated that the property had undergone significant alterations to the interior and exterior over the years, that it did not retain sufficient integrity to warrant individual designation for architectural style or type. Despite staff's recommendation, the Cultural Heritage Commission did recommend it to move forward. At this time, we will not be supportive of the Bullinger building being designated as a historic cultural monument, but would be if there was sufficient rehabilitation of the building done in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this? Mr. Blumenfield?
When was the last time that this building was used for living and working?
Again, Ken Bernstein, Department of City Planning. The building is still occupied as a commercial building with commercial tenants today.
So it's currently used?
It is currently in use.
Okay. And the commission was not unanimous on this one, right?
Check that. I believe they were not. I apologize. I don't think I have that in front of me. But it is correct that the staff recommendation was that it did not meet historic cultural monument criteria, largely due to alterations, past alterations and loss of integrity. The commission, nevertheless, did find that it met one of the historic cultural monument criteria as an increasingly rare corner-oriented commercial brick building in early Hollywood and as a creative incubator for persons in the Hollywood film industry.
Thank you.
Thank you. In light of the council office testimony in the record, we'll move to deny the, disapprove the nomination. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, so ordered. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to general public comment. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Herman?
So, the planning oral status report for sitting planning policies, as you just heard, over 45 minutes on 4 items, 7, 8, 9, and what other fucking number that Bob Blumenfield worked out a sweet deal. 0 for 4, Bob. Let's bring the bulldozers and the dynamite in and exhaust and the demise of these facilities, because we don't need this fucking shit in our communities. We're going to build, build, build. That's how us white niggers work. That's why you're married to one, so we can build, build, build with every operation at our force, using excessive force in Plum to tear down old fucking buildings and build new, new, new. So now that I, a wetback like Jose Weezer, have determined a declaration for planning, fuck you, 42 USC Bob and Jose Weezer.
Wayne?
Oh, we try to ask Bob Blumenfield, Bob!
Sir, you are out of order.
Save Hollywood!
Wayne, can you stop there, please?
Save
Listen
Hollywood!
to... Wayne, I'm trying to explain rules to you. If you do not listen, we're going to ask to cut off your time. Okay, that's your first warning. Sir, you cannot directly address individuals on this committee unless you could talk about the conduct of business in this committee, or what's over our purview, which is planning and land use. Other than that, please follow the rules. Thank you.
I'm just trying to save Hollywood from the bulldozers. You have to help us. I know there's no one here except Bob Blumenfield that would help. 4 fucking structures, Bob.
See you, man.
Bob, they're totally protected structures. You know that Hollywood needed to save at least 1 out of 4, but no. Why? Because of Mitch O'Farrell, Bob, and I know that you can't do anything, because if you do something, they'll stop your CD3 projects, and you have a deal. Yes. Bob! Save Hollywood, Bob. You're the last hope. Save it from the drunk Jose Weezer.
That was actually entertaining. I would pay to see that act. Any other business before us?
No, Councilman.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.